Well, we thought we were going to be back in the horseshoe for the Monday after Ohio State 21, Nebraska 17. I looked at the weather. It said it was going to be in the 30s. I didn't want to stand outside for 45 minutes. So you get
What?
us
What?
virtually.
What?
It's the Monday after Ohio State 21, Nebraska 17. Nobody cares where we do it. It just matters that we talk about the Buckeyes after the win over Nebraska. Andy, I'm going to you first. I'm not going to waste any time. There in the middle, Andy Backstrom, Tim May, the 41-year vet, on the other side. Andy, I'm not wasting any time here. Everybody rewatch the game. Do you feel better or worse about this game after the rewatch?
I feel the same about it. I mean, my reaction after the game was that this is going to happen in college football. Tim mentioned it. It's a weird season. It's almost got a little bit of that 2007 flair where there's a lot of movement at the top of the poll. Feels like anyone can lose on any given Saturday. The most important thing is you get out with a win. Ohio State did that. I do think that, watching it back, there's more nuance in some of my perspective on some of the individual play. I think that Will Howard threw the football really well. I think that it's a lot made of his inability to throw downfield. I don't really agree with that take. I think he's 10 of 17 now on throws, traveling 20-plus air yards this season. He was 2 of 2 on Saturday against Nebraska, throwing a 40-yard touchdown to Carnell Tate and a 60-yard touchdown to Jeremiah Smith. You could say that the throw to Carnell Tate was a little bit underthrown. I don't really care. He got the job done. Now, I do think that Will Howard could have been better with his reads. I think there were times looking back in that game, I don't know. We don't know exactly what is an RPO all the time. The goal of that, of course, is to hide if it is and if it isn't. We don't know how much freedom he has at the line of scrimmage. I thought that the first fourth down, Spencer, you pointed on the press box, and I agree with you. They could have just sneaked for like 2 or 3 yards, to get the first down there and capitalize on that great field position. They didn't. I don't know if that's a Will Howard thing or if that's a Chip Kelly thing. There was later in the game where I felt like, there were times where he could have made the right read as far as tucking the ball and running and reading the crashing edge defender, or if it's an RPO, getting a quick pass out of there, because at times there were unblocked, defensive ends or linebackers that were just crashing in on the run. And, the offensive line didn't play well, but also, I don't know, I think Will Howard could have made some better decisions and better reads in those situations. Of course, had the interception as well, where I think he didn't make the right read and also overthrew Emeka Egbuka. So I think he threw the ball pretty well generally, as far as the run game coordinator stuff goes, and some of those other decisions he has to make at the line. Watching him back, I'm not so sure he made all of his best decisions.
Yeah, I'm just I was just wondering, like a buddy of mine. I didn't really want to write about this till I got to at least ask a couple of questions of people in the know. In the post game press conference, you don't really get to ask all the questions because you've got 1,000 of them in your head. But for example, several of those short yardage situations, we didn't see 2 backs in the backfield. We didn't see. I'm trying to remember if Will Howard was under center for more than one of them. We didn't see a lot of things that we kind of become accustomed to. Even at Oregon, they had some short yards. They lined up in robust T, and I don't understand where that all went. I mean, I'm bewildered by kind of the game plan offensively and how they went about things. And maybe there was a question of who was available, but both your big time running backs were available. I mean, this running game it's easy to see what Nebraska was doing, especially when you watch it a second time, but you could see it the first time. They were giving you confusing looks with their defensive front, which is what they do. So that was nothing new. But they were mixing and matching, and more often than not, if they showed 5 or 6 guys up front, almost every one of them came. Sometimes they didn't, but you almost always had a free runner defensively coming at you in the running game, which is, wow. It's just it's easy to understand how that happens, but it's not easy to understand why it was not prepared for a little bit more, I guess is the better way of putting it unclearly. And it's kind of like what Will Howard, I think, was facing when he was at the line of scrimmage. Where are we running this ball? Like you're talking about being the running game coordinator. He's not the guy calling the play. He's not the guy sending the players in from the sideline. So, this one falls a little bit on Chip Kelly and the offensive plan, in my opinion. It was woefully short in the running game for sure. Can't be that way this week.
I took a lot of note of just how much. Obviously, the storyline is how much they miss Josh Simmons in the run game. I didn't think they were terrible at. I didn't think Zen Mahalski was like the culprit of why they couldn't run the ball. I thought the tight end blocking was terrible, and there were a couple plays. I think I screenshotted one and sent it over to Andy yesterday. Like just whiffing on a block that doesn't even let the running back get to the line of scrimmage, let alone the second level. Like these backs are so gifted if you just get them to the line of scrimmage. And there were times where Will Kacmarik's absence was just as noticeable in the run game as Josh Simmons's was. I don't know how that gets fixed unless you just try a different set of tight ends out there. Does Patrick Gurd need to play more in the run game? Does Bennett Christian need to play 40 snaps if you're going to run the ball 25, 30 times? I don't know, but it was noticeable to me. And it didn't look right. And I did think that Will Kacmarik's absence affected the run game maybe more than we anticipated it doing. And so now that the goal is to figure out how to get better in run blocking because what you did wasn't good enough.
Yeah, but Zen did have a challenge. I mean, Zen did have a tough time also. I agree with you. I agree. I mean, that's what my point, though. But that's what Nebraska does. You know, what Nebraska was showing you, that's what they do. And, if you beat a block, you beat a block. You know, line up and play the next time, right? I mean, I'm talking about when you're on the offensive side. But, I just didn't quite understand the plan. Like I told y'all after the game, I don't know really why they didn't throw the ball 50 times and move on.
Yeah, I think the throws were there. I don't know if they just didn't trust Zen Mahalski there at left tackle, and if not, then that's bigger issues because you have to.
Well, you want to be able to run the ball. I understand the insistence on that, but go ahead.
Yes, yeah. I don't know if it's the idea of not wanting to continue to test him in pass blocking. I don't know if it was you just didn't feel like you had it, I guess, even though Will Howard was 10 of 10 and looked really good at one point and could have probably went beyond that number. I don't know, Andy. It was just the offense. And the reason that we go to the offense first is because we had all these defensive questions, and I still have a lot of questions about the defense after this game. But I mean, you have all these defensive questions with the off week. Ryan Day said he spent all his time with the defense. Well, he might as well get it back in with this offense because it was terrible compared to what we're used to on Saturday. And so, it's defense not good enough one week, offense not good enough the next week. It's now you're trying to find that balance because this is an offensive critique first half of this show, Andy.
I have serious questions about this offensive line. This is the fourth season in a row that Ohio State's had a run performance with 60 some yards, okay, less than 70 yards in a game, and that's unacceptable for Ohio State. Ryan Day always talks about the goal is to beat Michigan, right? Or those matchup games, you got to win the rushing yard total. You can't win it with 64 rushing yards. That's just not going to get the job done. We've talked about so many times the last couple of years, short yardage situations. You can't go 1 of 10 on third down. They're 1 of 2 on fourth down. That's not going to get it done either. So that largely falls on the offensive line. You mentioned the tight end blocking, Spencer. That's a factor in that as well. But I came up out of this game being like, how did they evaluate in 2 weeks that Zen Mahalski was one of the best 5 in the offensive line? And I don't want to kick him in when he's down. Hopefully, he's recovering well from whatever injury he's dealing with. It was just not a great day for Zen Mahalski. For me, it falls more on the coaching in this situation of they had 2 weeks to put these guys up against what they believe is the best defense in the country and test them out against JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer and the allotment of all those pass rushers and defensive linemen. And they felt that that was the best alignment. And it just really didn't feel like that was the best 5 they could be putting out there. And so my question is, how did they come to that conclusion? How much did they practice with Donovan Jackson at left tackle? Because it feels like that's the route they're going to have to go now, at least in my opinion. And, now how do they respond from there? And, why is it Luke Montgomery that's at left guard instead of Austin Saraveld, who started 2 games there? Like, there's a lot of questions for me about who's going in the game and why they're there and what is the evaluation here, because whatever they trotted out against Nebraska certainly didn't work, guys.
Yeah. bottom line is for the second straight game, Ohio State got outscored, meaning had more scores against it than it produced. You know what I mean? And or at least the same amount of scores. Let's put it that way. But actually, Nebraska scored 4 times, 3 field goals and a touchdown and 2-point conversion. Ohio State scored 3 times. Same thing with Oregon. Oregon got by on field goals, and that's just not getting down the field and doing your part when you've got the football. And no matter where you cast the blame, that's what it is. But like I said, there was confusion up front on who to block, where that person was going, etc. They had trouble, for want of another term, in my opinion, watching the video, identifying the Mike linebacker. You know what I'm talking about when so and so's the Mike. It was you could just see they were befuddled to a certain extent from just a blocking standpoint. And sometimes Nebraska had more guys than they could block attacking on different plays. And like I said, my real poster photo or poster video is a better way of putting it for this game was when they ran what looked like an option, a wide option, one time to the right side. And Will Howard ended up giving the ball away to Travion Henderson. It's like they were reading the defensive end. They left him unblocked, but there was the defensive end, and then there was another guy outside the defensive end, both unblocked. And you go, well, number one, that's a bad read, but number two, that was the option. And number three, holy smokes, how did that happen? So that's what I'm talking about. It's like it was discombobulation more than anything else.
Well, they were certainly discombobulated when they tried to run the super counter where everybody pulls to the right and Tegra Shabola pulled to the left. Just an absolute disaster. And I don't know how they got 5-6 yards on it. Quinshon Judkins made everybody look good, except for the guy pulling the other way, because he ended up getting yardage on a play that was completely broken.
But they've run that before. They've run that little action before.
They've run it before where everybody pulls.
Blocker,
They've run it before, Tim, where everybody pulls, not somebody pulls the wrong way.
No, but they've run before where a guy pulls counter to it. I mean, I can go back and show you a couple of examples. I just didn't think it was like Nebraska mixed it up. You know what I mean? Mixed up what was supposed to happen on that play.
I do not put the blame on Nebraska's front at all for this offensive performance.
Really?
I don't. I really don't.
Give them any credit at all for that's interesting.
No. Huh. I mean, they made plays against the offensive line that they were presented against, but this offensive line was not good enough. And if it's the same way, which it can't be, because I don't know how Zen Michalski would be healthy after being carted off the field and not being able to put weight on his leg. And so you're down to option 3. I do, Andy, like you said, I expect option 3 to be better than option 2, because I think you get something out of having potentially Donovan Jackson playing tackle, even though it's just not his natural position. He's a guy who can do it. We've talked about it. In 2023, we thought he might be the left tackle when they were going through tackle roulette and not knowing if anybody was good enough and not knowing if Josh Simmons was going to be able to play at a Big Ten level after coming over. We thought maybe Donovan Jackson was going to play left tackle. And so we know he can do it. I think he's better suited to do it than Zen Michalski was. And again, we're not the point of this exercise is not to just shovel dirt on Zen Michalski. That's not the idea here. But as everyone says, the standard is the standard at Ohio State. It wasn't up to the standard. Now they have to find the standard because it just wasn't good enough. I think that we can put a bow on the offense. We're going to get to the defense, and then we'll look ahead a little bit to Penn State, what all this means. I'm going to go real quickly first and throw it to Andy. On the notebook, the defensive notebook that I do every Sunday, if you haven't seen it at lettermenrow.com, I just take parts of the defense and break them down every week. It's never the same, so you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates with the defensive side of the ball. This week, I looked at all 3 of Ohio State's sacks because they had none against Oregon. I wanted to know if the pass rush improved or if Jim Knowles just became more diabolical. It's definitely the latter. 3 sacks. They brought at least 5 on all 3. They simulated a 6th on the 3rd sack. So they basically brought 6 on all 3. They're not getting home with 4 still is the point. And that's a problem, Andy. unless it's not a problem, because I think Nebraska has just as good, if not maybe a little bit better receivers than Penn State does. I know they have better receivers than Michigan does. Indiana is probably the exception here. You're not going to be able to bring 6 very often against Indiana. The rest of this regular season, they can probably sustain blitzing and getting home on third downs and doing these things. Once you get to the playoff, it's a different story, but you've got a couple weeks to prepare and you can try to get home with 4 in those regards. I'm just curious, Andy, what did you take from the pass rush? Because I thought there were aspects of it that might be better, but I also thought there were times where Jim Knowles just flat out turned up the heat, brought everybody and decided there was going to be a party at the quarterback no matter what.
Yeah, the output is better. You have 3 sacks, you have 13 tackles for loss, and that's a pretty good day. But you're right. I think they need to win more one-on-ones, like the JT Tuimoloau sack, unblocked. Nice play. He dragged down Dylan Raiola with one arm, and that's pretty cool to watch. But again, unblocked. Ty Hamilton sack also unblocked, and I think the Tyleik Williams sack at the beginning of the game was probably the most impressive, just like pure rush. I think Dylan Raiola probably could have gotten the ball out quicker. That's more of a freshman quarterback mistake, but hey, Tyleik Williams made him pay. But I think you're onto something there with the traditional rush was not as effective as you want. But again, kudos to Jim Knowles for just, dialing it up and letting it all out. And I think that's what everyone was asking from him. I think he was able to have a little bit more free reign with that this week against Nebraska, and it worked out. And so I agree with you that the schedule is favorable in that way, but at a certain point, you're going to have to win those one-on-ones when you play against better offenses that have better weapons on the outside. And whether that's the Big Ten championship, you're facing Oregon again, or whether that's in the playoff and you're facing teams that are there for a reason. So, it's at a certain point, they got to figure that out. And there were times where they were close and couldn't do it. I think you sent me a screenshot, Spencer, of a Jack Sawyer sack that maybe could have been and wasn't. And how many times again have we talked about so close, but not there? So I think it's a mixed bag. Overall defense, I thought was pretty great on Saturday generally, but I do agree that in those individual battles on the defensive line, they need to be better with just rushing 4.
Yeah, my take on that is in modern college football, you almost need to bring 5 in some form or fashion from one pass play to the next and mix and match. I think Jim Knowles has the right idea. There were a couple of times as y'all were watching and I was watching that they let guys run free in the defensive secondary on one particular drive where could have been 2 touchdowns scored. Of course, you can only get to score 1 touchdown per drive, but Dylan Raiola just missed or was late getting there. But that's going to happen. Number 2, I think Nebraska is a much improved football program, including the play of their offensive line and their defensive lines compared to even a year ago. I'm not discounting that aspect of it at all, but in particular with Ohio State, they weren't playing Akron out there. That was a really pretty good, pretty well coached football team on both sides of the lines. And I thought when Ohio State needed a play for the most part, it got one. My favorite play of the whole day was turned in by a defensive lineman when JT Tuimoloau stepped past a guy, was untouched, and the running back ran right into his chest, and he knocked him down. That was pretty impressive. Shades of, what was that, Vernon Golston. But the bottom line is, it can always be better. It's funny what we're talking about. We're hammering on today, and it's going to get its major test again on Saturday is the offensive line and the defensive line against semi-like opponents. It's left you wondering a little bit. Now, I say that at Oregon, Ohio State had well over 400 yards total offense. That's a pretty good day for the most part. They ran the ball. Yeah, they had one big run. It really set it up. The 53-yard run by Travion Henderson, but they rushed the ball for 140 something yards. Andy, like you pointed out in your story, 64 yards doesn't cut it against anybody, rushing wise. I'm talking about Ohio State's offensive line. Defensive line, I don't believe these guys are Superman. I never have thought they were Superman. I thought they had some individual skills, which were super. And occasionally the other team just blocks you. But you're right. I mean, when Jim Knowles mixes it up, I think he's as good a mixer as there is in the country in terms of setting guys up to make some plays. And in the end, of course, they got the stop when they needed it, the interception. So I give it up to him because I'm telling you, I'm standing on the sidelines, 20 yards from the 25 yards from the actual action. And it was ferocious. The defensive line was ferocious on that last Nebraska possession. It was kind of stunning to watch.
There it is. That's as close as Jack Sawyer can get to the quarterback right now. He just
now you're just picking on people, man.
No, I'm not picking on him. I'm saying right now, he can't buy a sack. He's really close and he can't get there. And I know that it's frustrating for Jack. I know. And listen, I'm not dogging on the guy. If I wanted to go back 15 minutes, if you want to hear me dog on a guy, which it is what it is. The standard is the standard. Like, I know Jack is better than what his sack output shows right now. He had 3 sacks against Missouri. He was on a tear the last 6 games last year in the regular season. I think he's just going through a little bit of struggles right now because JT Tuimoloau, there were times where he was getting home and not getting pressure. It seems like Jack is having a tough time right now getting pressure. And again, there are times where I will be critical of guys. I'm being understanding that I think Jack Sawyer I think he's just going through a little bit of like a sack slump. And I don't know if that's a real thing because at the end of the day, like whether you get home or not is kind of the name of the game here. But also, like, it is tough right now. He just, again, like, this image, hold on, Tim, this image shows it really well. Like, he's right there, and Raiola just shoulders him off, and it's like, man, you're just oh so close. And it's almost like a Zach Harrison thing that we used to talk about where, another quarter second, and he's got a sack, and instead it's a completion for a pass, and it's like, you can't buy one right now. And then when he does, it seems like they come in bunches, and maybe those sacks are coming in bunches for Jack. But right now, if they're not bringing 6, they're not getting home, and I think that's a problem. Ohio State fans, let me tell you something about Roback Active Wear. There's only one way to describe Roback: best fit, best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Roback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback just released their new game day collection, and it's awesome. With novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else on the market is pairing this level of custom designs with the quality of activewear. Roback does it better. Roback's everyday short are the perfect pairing as well. They are comfortable, have an elastic waistband, and great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short, but the comfort of athletic shorts. Roback is also proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with college stars Jalen Milroe, the quarterback at Alabama, Quinn Ewers, quarterback at Texas, former Buckeye, and Ohio State safety Caleb Downs, one of your favorite players on the team. I know it. Among others, they're becoming the go-to brand for college athletes. They've got a lot of Ohio State stuff, the Blocko on some things, Ohio State logos all over those polos. Use the code Lettermen20 on Roback.com for a generous 20% off for all new customers through the end of the week. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Lettermen20. Go check it out. Roback Activewear. Enter the code Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from our friends over at Roback. I've been rocking the Roback hoodie for a long time. Come join the fun. You've been wanting Roback. Now you've got a chance to get some Roback and get the Ohio State logo on Roback. Go to Roback.com, Lettermen20 for 20% off your first purchase from the folks over at Roback.
Yeah, ever how they come, right? And here's the thing: I'm not knocking you for being critical. Especially, I'm not knocking anybody for being critical individuals. Because, fellas, we're in a new era now. These guys are getting paid. You know what I mean? This is no different than a pro football team in respect of for those I mix up this stupid cliche all the time for those who get a lot, much is expected. Ever how that cliche goes. How's that go in Boston College? I can't remember, Andy. But the bottom line is you could and here's the thing, like I was talking last year a bunch, but like in zone defense, for example, zone pass coverage, it always ends up being a man-to-man at the very end. You know what I mean? It comes down to an individual making a play, making the right decision, and making plays. And you're right. I mean, there have been some oh-so-closes this year when this defense has looked ferocious. Here's my problem with judging either side of this ball is that until they played Oregon, maybe you could say against Iowa, but Iowa's turned out to be a little bit of a pretender instead of a contender, or a lot of a pretender maybe. They haven't really gone against big time quality across the line of scrimmage. I'm talking about offensive line against defensive line against offensive line. Now you can watch them play against guys that are pretty good. I thought, like I said, I thought Nebraska's offensive line was pretty good, and same with their defensive front. So I don't think we're being harsh by any stretch of pointing out individuals not getting it done, at the moment when it needs to get done, the moment of truth, so to speak. Every play has a moment of truth.
Let's move on to a couple things that I liked. I was
backing you up there, Spence, not the other way.
I know. Around. Yeah. No, I'm moving us along here, Tim.
How about intermission so people go get something to drink and come back? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They probably need a drink after listening to this, because it hasn't been the most sunshine and rainbow.
You know why? Because the game was disjointed. That was a weird, strange, clunky game again for Ohio State. I don't know if you agree or not. I just, offensively, there was nothing you could hang. I mean, it was two big plays and then a really good drive. That's what it was.
Yeah. Well, so let's get back to the defense. I heard I listened to a couple national podcasts Saturday night, Sunday morning, because that's what I do. I'm a college football junkie. Talking about Nebraska's pace. So Andy, I went back and watched against Indiana. Nebraska was dialing up the pace and running pretty quick and turning the ball over and going for it on fourth down, and just handed the ball back to Indiana. It didn't work out very well for them. It was 56-7. Against Ohio State, there's not a team in the country. I don't think Navy played as slow as Nebraska did. Ohio State only had 46 plays in this game. Nebraska used the clock. They did not allow Ohio State to have the football. They shortened the game by a ton, which results in Ohio State running. I think it was 47 plays, 66-47. That's going to disjoint not only your offense, but your defense. And I did take that into consideration when trying not to be too overly critical of this defense, because overall I thought the defense played pretty well. Two things I really liked, Andy, and I want to get your temperature on this. Caleb Downs was really good. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Saved a touchdown.
Absolutely. He's the savior of the.
I thought you saved two, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think he saved a ton this year. Bottom line. Second thing, I thought they did a really good job. Ohio State did a really, really good job of defending Thomas Fidone, who's the tight end. He got away on one, 33 yards, because he used the referee as a pick on Caleb Downs, catches the ball, runs free. Other than that, and you can't excuse that because it's a play that happened. But other than that, he had a 5-yard gain, a 9-yard gain, and an 8-yard gain. Andy, you know where I'm going with this. The best tight end in the freaking country plays at Penn State. And I think Thomas Fidone is a really good tight end too. Ohio State recruited him hard. They wanted him. He's a really good player. I think I can take some really good things away from the way they defended Fidone when it comes to transferring that over to how they can stop Tyler Warren and this Penn State passing attack. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have to use Caleb Downs in that way. I mean, we're going to have to see what the situation is with Lathan Ransom. I think with Caleb Downs playing a little bit more towards the box, being more of that almost linebacker mold, we saw him against Thomas Fidone a lot in coverage situations. So maybe that's the way they go with Tyler Warren as well for Penn State, who, as you mentioned, has just been awesome this year. I think that could be the way to go. With the safety situation, I found it fascinating, the solution that Ohio State came up with. At first, I was thinking maybe you just try to do a 1-for-1 transfer, have one of those guys replace Lathan Ransom back there. But they did a lot of complicated things with cycling guys in and out. Really what it was, you have Jalen McClain start the game in the 4-3 defense. Arvell Reese was in there as well. And then in the 4-2-5 base, you had Jordan Hancock playing mostly safety. And in that nickel spot that Hancock usually plays, you had a split between Lorenzo Styles Jr. and Jermaine Matthews. So, and at times they were taking the nickel guy and moving him up top and then having Jordan Hancock slide down to nickel. So it was just a lot of moving parts. And I think, hat tip to Mac Verreri, as well as Tim Walton, and just figuring that all out. And of course, Jim Knowles, because that's not what I assumed was going to happen, but maybe that was the best solution because look, it ends up with Jordan Hancock making the winning play at safety, and that was the game. So I think that needs to be pointed out because that was maybe not the most direct answer, but they took the outside the box approach and it worked out really well. But as far as the tight ends go, yeah, I think Caleb Downs was kind of a big reason why that there wasn't as much production as maybe you would see.
Yeah,
he's got to be
not only does Jordan Hancock make the winning play on that, I mean, with that interception, it was a savvy play. I mean, there was savvy involved there, which was quite interesting, considering how little he's played, safety, well, this year, you know what I mean? I mean, the bottom line is I just thought there were a lot of guys. Lorenzo Styles Jr. made a great pass breakup on a route that went all the way across the field, and he stayed right with it and made a huge play. I mean, I was quite impressed by the way the secondary played. And by the way, the Caleb Downs, the interesting thing about him claiming the pick by the umpire, he had interaction with that umpire a lot during the game, which showed you sort of where his mind was and what his duties were. I mean, I remember him talking to him several times before the snap, basically getting him out of the way because that's savvy. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. That's savvy also from a still young defensive back to know what's coming, have a feel for what's coming, and also where he wants to roam, so to speak. But I agree with the way. I don't know how they got those guys coached up like that from the standpoint of I can understand Lathan Ransom understanding all of that from one week to the next. But those guys, the way they intersperse them, Jordan Hancock standing back there sometimes at your deep safety, flip-flopping with Caleb Downs, I thought it was extremely well done.
Last thing, I think Cody Simon played really, really, really well. Just not only the last two plays there on that drive, the screen the play that he made, but then also I think it was another screen to back-to-back where he blew him up on the opposite sides of the field. Man, he's just so underrated. Everybody talked all offseason about Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks and the potential of Arvell Reese. And, obviously they're going to have to tweak some things, not having Arvell in the first half against Penn State on just an absolute, I don't have a mute beeper button, so I can't say it, but BS call, because I would just say it on Arvell Reese there.
Hey, wait, I want to ask you a question. I had already left the press box. So I'm standing there right there, probably, like I said, like 20, 25 yards from where it happened. Initially, I thought he hit him sort of high, but I never thought he hit him in the head. And then I watched the replay on the big screen, and some of the officials were watching the replay on the big screen. I was watching them watch it. I'm talking about the referees, officials, not, administrators.
Yeah.
And I was more reinforced. He hit him right in the shoulder area here with his shoulder, not with his helmet. And so I never quite understood the call. And of course, Ryan Day didn't either after he watched it. We saw him get blown. So did you guys see anything because I was talking to guys in the interview room afterward who were still in the press box. Oh yeah, it was targeting. I go,
it was.
I didn't see it. Huh?
By the letter of the law, it was targeting.
Why? I mean, where did he? I watched the replay a while ago and I just didn't see it. Go ahead.
He put his shoulder into the dude's face mask and hit him in the head. By the letter of the law, I guess that's targeting. I also don't understand what he's supposed to do other than let the guy catch the ball to prevent that. The rule is entirely broken. There's he's not allowed to play the last drive of the most important drive of the season to date. And now also you take him out for the first half of the next game, which is the most important thing. If we're all about the student athlete, suspending them for an entire half of football because they lowered their shoulder too far is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's football, put flags on them. I don't care. Just put flags on them, get it over with. We can all go home and go watch something else because it's just garbage. And I get it, player safety. But if he lets up, and there are so many instances where if a defender lets up, he's going to get killed himself. And so, the thing that I was always told in Pee Wee football, trust your pads and run hard. If you run hard, you're not going to get hurt. These guys, if they let up, get hurt more often than when they're going hard. It's just the way that it is. I don't understand what he's supposed to do there other than
He's
just
lower.
let the guy. I don't know. It drives me nuts. Again, by the letter of the law, it was targeting, I guess. He's not going to play the first half of the Penn State game. That's a pretty significant loss considering the personnel that we saw deployed, especially against tight end sets. Penn State's going to do that until the cows come home in Happy Valley. And Ohio State's going to have to find a way to defend it without one of its best 3 linebackers in the biggest game of the season. Speaking of the biggest game of the season, let's spin it forward. Andy, I'll just get one because we're going to be up against 40 minutes here, and that's what I like to keep this Monday show at. What's your first read on this Ohio State Penn State game? You got a first thought? Tim, I'll get to you right after that. But the first thought on Ohio State Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think there's going to be a good bit of heavy personnel they face from a defensive standpoint. So yeah, probably get a little bit more of that 4-3 that we've seen this season against those packages. Certainly. I'm really curious to see what the Drew Aller situation is with his injury against Wisconsin. I think that changes things. Of course, if he's not available, I mean, Bo Pribula played pretty well. He gives them a running option. Not that Drew Aller doesn't. He can also run the football, but kind of more of that Trace McSorley mold. I guess that's just what he looks like, as far as a runner and a little bit thinner build than Drew Aller's a big guy, kind of more of like the Will Howard mold. So I'm really interested to see what happens with that situation, if Drew Aller can play or not. I think that changes things. And then, in general, Penn State, you could say they faced adversity, certainly against USC, when USC made that comeback, or they had made the comeback against USC, down 20-6 at halftime. But I don't know if they faced an opponent quite like Ohio State to this point. So I'm curious to see how they respond. Of course, the James Franklin question is how they'll respond in those games. Just typically has not been good against Ohio State and Michigan in his time, 10 years as the head coach at Penn State. So we got a home game. It's a noon kick. The environment's going to be awesome. But again, how do they respond against the toughest test they've faced as well this season? Whereas Ohio State's already gone on the road to face the top 3 opponent, learned from that experience. And as bad as this game maybe felt for fans this week against Nebraska for Ohio State, it does condition them to have a 4-quarter game back-to-back weeks. This one's going to go into the 4 quarters, fourth quarter against Penn State. So that is one way to spin it, as you're getting that experience of knowing you're going to have to be conditioned for that this week as well.
Yeah, my take is Penn State's going to try to come after this offensive line of Ohio State's, no matter whatever form that line takes. Thought it was going back to the Cotton Bowl. That was the worst I've ever seen an Ohio State offensive line play, maybe ever, since I've been covering the team. Saturday against Nebraska, a team that was still outmanned, in my opinion, from a talent standpoint. Ohio State couldn't get out of its own way running the football. I mean, it was the Death Valley between the first touchdown of the first half and the second touchdown of the first half was mind-blowing to me. And then third quarter, where Ohio State has been dominant all season, had gone into the game outscoring opponents 84-0 in the third quarter, whatever that was.
Yeah,
they didn't sniff. And that's you got to have some offense in a game like this. So I think the major concern, whereas coming out of the Oregon game, the major concern was getting pressure and getting sacks. The major concern in this game might be opening holes and keeping the other team from getting sacks. Is the best way to put it, because I think defensively Ohio State can play with these guys. I see a decent Penn State offense, but not a great Penn State offense. That's my take initially going into this.
Yeah, it's 91-6 in the third quarter.
Yeah, but it was 84-0, I think, at one point.
It was 84-0 prior to the Oregon game. Oregon got a touchdown.
Yeah.
Ohio State got a touchdown, and now Nebraska got a field goal. It is 91-6 in the third quarter. Here's the thing. Penn State has also been just a lethal third quarter team. So make it back to your seats before the end of the halftime break, folks. You may be, actually, if you're going to the game, you might not get in your seat until the start of the third quarter because of everything that's going on over in Happy Valley on Saturday. We're going to get on the road and leave for Happy Valley now just to make sure we get there by Saturday.
Wait, let me correct you. Oregon did not score in the third quarter.
Okay, well, it is 91-6 in the third quarter this year.
Yeah.
I do know that for a fact. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to get out of here because we're going to have to get on the road to Happy Valley because in order to get there for Saturday at noon, it's going to be a mess over there. But the game is going to be awesome. Lettermen Row will be there every step of the way in the build up to number 4 Ohio State at number 3 Penn State. It's going to be an absolutely awesome week over at lettermenrow.com. Go get your membership right now, 50% off. Come hang out with us in the Lettermen Lounge message board. We're talking, we're arguing, we're having fun. We're having some not so much fun. Some of the members very angry about the performance. Whether you're happy about it, angry about it, or you just want to talk Ohio State football, come hang out with us in the Lettermen Lounge message board. We have a great time over there. Like the video below. Please like the video below. It helps us out a lot. And you've already watched 39 minutes of this thing. You might as well like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for all of our content. Tim May's podcast, The Tim May Show. We got bold predictions on Friday. We just did a rapid reaction from Saturday in the Horseshoe. We'll be over in Happy Valley for another rapid reaction after that. There's a lot coming at lettermenrow.com. Get over to lettermenrow.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com. We'll see you Saturday in Happy Valley.